All right, I think we're live. Namaste and welcome to the Bharatvaarta Weekly. I am Roshan Karyappa. I have with me Abhishek Paul and also returning from a long hiatus, Prasanna Vishwanathan as well. And we will walk you through the news and events of the week that was. It was quite an interesting week. So today we'll talk about Prime Minister Modi's visit to Tokyo, the court judgment on Yasin Malik, the upcoming IPL finals between Gujarat and Rajasthan, and India qualifying to the Super Four stage in the Asia Cup hockey in very dramatic circumstances, and a lot more. So hey Abhishek, hey Prasanna, welcome to the weekly. Thanks so much for making the time.
Hi guys.
Yeah, hi, Carrie. Hi, Prasanna.
All right, so before we begin the episode from last week, this was a very interesting conversation with both Mohal and Nirav about the US dollar as a reserve currency. And of course, I mean, recent events has caused us to question the validity of it, right? I mean, whether you take the Russia-Ukraine war or, the inflation and so on and so forth. And we looked at it from various perspectives. We went back in history, talked about Bretton Woods and the agreement, the gold reserve, the petrodollar, and what could be alternates, right? I mean, we could revert to some kind of a gold standard or maybe some of these cryptocurrencies and so on and so forth. Spoke about the validity of all of it. Very wide-ranging conversation. Definitely have a look at it, listen to it, and let us know what you think. Um, Start things off. Prime Minister Modi was in Tokyo for the Quad Summit, where he interacted with world leaders. The Prime Minister also participated in an event to launch the Indo Pacific Economic Framework, or IPEF, for prosperity, along with US President Joe Biden and the Prime Minister of Japan, Kishida Fumio. The IPEF seeks to strengthen economic partnership amongst participating countries. Its main objectives include enhancing resilience, sustainability, inclusiveness, economic growth, fairness, and competitiveness in the Indo Pacific region. India is keen to collaborate with partner countries under the IPEF and work towards advancing regional economic connectivity, integration, and boosting trade and investment within the region. Abhishek, the Prime Minister had a very warm welcome, right? And yeah, I mean, it seems very significant.
Yeah, so this was another Quad summit, and interestingly, coming right after the conclusion of the Australian elections. So it was quite interesting or significant that the new Australian Prime Minister sort of just took his oath and was then quickly representing Australia at the Quad summit. So interesting timing on that front. And I guess the sort of good thing is that that he's like leader of the Labour Party in Australia, which is quite left of center, and probably historically has had a more softer outlook towards China, but they have reiterated their commitment towards Quad. So that is probably a significant thing to note as far as the Australian point of view goes. Uh, Coming to the Quad Summit and the IPAF, yes. So I think there is a piece by Ambassador Kawal Sibbal, in the media where he claimed a couple of important positives for India, coming out of the Quad meetings. One being that uh, it the continued Ukraine-Russia conflict and India's position continues to sort of be understood and appreciated by all. India did not face any pushback or pressures at the Quad summit as far as its position was concerned. Also, I think there is a mention with regard to combating cross-border terrorism in the Quad-related joint statements and declarations, right? So that's also a good outcome for India. With regard to the IPEF, yes, quite a big announcement by the United States in terms of uh, you know uh, sort of increasing or continuing their pivot towards Indo-Pacific and Asia, right? Which is sort of talked about a lot in their strategic circles these days as they seek to counter the influence of China. So I think this IPF, how does it sort of all pan out, is something for us to wait and see. I think the some of the important points in that IPF framework are number one, building resilient supply chains, right? And I think there is this concept coming up called friend sourcing, right? Where it's probably not possible for you to have everything uh, totally like 100% Atmanirbhar, but you can have your supply chains as far as possible in a network of countries which you can sort of reliably consider as friends and allies, right? And that will help build resilience, right? I mean, companies today all over the world across industries are getting really impacted by how the lockdowns in China are continuing even today, right? It's like having a huge impact on industries across the world. Right. The other few points include cooperation on sustainability and green technology. Then there is talk of combating tax evasion, and tax harboring. So various important topics brought up, but we have to wait and see how it goes. It's not a classic free trade agreement block that is there, and but it's like a framework on which countries will be interacting with each other, right? The 13 countries who have initially signed up for this framework. I think one other thing I will probably point out as I was reading the various outcomes from Quad, and one of the big announcements is that there is a maritime domain awareness partnership that has got signed up, wherein uh, commercial satellite data from the countries will sort of be shared across Quad countries and other partners in the Indo-Pacific data. And this is sort of this tilt towards more maritime based security initiative is, I think, being talked about in strategic circles as a big win, right? As more sort of satellite data, etc., comes in to replace more legacy technologies. And on a security front, it is pretty impressive. I think there is a pretty good article in the website War on the Rocks, which I would suggest folks to check out, which talks about this in detail.
Yeah. And that's a pretty good looking photo, right? With Prime Minister Modi kind of leading the way. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on. Kashmir Liberation Front chief Yasin Malik was sentenced to life imprisonment earlier this week. The high profile case saw the separatist leader convicted in connection with a Jammu and Kashmir terror funding case. Malik had pleaded guilty in the case and did not contest the charges against him. According to the charge sheet, Malik collected funds domestically and abroad to fund the activities of terrorist organizations such as Lashkar e Taiba and Hizbul Mujahideen. So, Prasanna, I mean, to me, I thought this was an open shut case, right? Because even I think Yasin Malik's defense itself is that I've turned over a new leaf, right? And he quoted Mahatma Gandhi and so on. But I was quite surprised by the reactions. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, not exactly right on predictable lines, right? He was for long the so as to speak the poster boy of the terrorism in Kashmir, no? Like except for the fact that he tried to kind of uh, reinvent himself as a born again Gandhian, so as to speak. Okay, and I think this is probably one of the less what do you call grievous charges against him, right? Like he's also facing other charges for which he awaits punishment. Um, I think only thing that was a sore note was I saw some condemnation note by OIC as well, there, the Organization of Islamic Countries actually, which was little disconcerting that quite brazen and blatant in my understanding. But other than that, I think the reactions have been on predictable manner, and I guess the Indian state has asserted itself to, and it's probably pretty robust and strong in Kashmir that you hardly had any fallout out of this. I hope like the more serious convictions are also in the pipeline on this.
Yeah. And I thought there was some news about Mr. Mufti's daughter being called, being summoned
Correct.
or
For
something,
one
right?
of
She
those
was
old.
kidnapped. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's pretty interesting how this is unraveling. Uh, In a very unfortunate incident, 7 Indian soldiers were killed and 19 injured after a vehicle fell into the Ladakh River. A 26-soldier team was moving from a transit camp in Partapur to a forward location in the Hanif subsector at around 9 a.m. on Friday, about 25 kilometers from Thwais, a major military base in Nubra Valley. The vehicle skidded off the road and fell into the Shok River. The mishap happened in Turtuk sector in the morning, with the vehicle falling from a height of around 50 to 60 feet, officials said. The troops were initially taken to a field hospital at Partapur, with the army dispatching surgical teams from Leh. 7 of them were declared dead. In the evening, the Air Force moved the injured soldiers to the Army Command Hospital at Chandi Mandir in Haryana's Panchkula district. This was said in an army statement. Abhishek, it's pretty tragic what happened.
As you described, 26 people, soldiers were there in that vehicle convoy, and then 7 of them, are dying in this unfortunate accident, and the other 19 were injured. So, yeah, I think, incidents like these are sort of grim reminder, right, of how difficult and precarious the task of securing our borders is always, right? And yeah, I mean, there has been so much improvement in the infrastructure in our border areas, but even then there is still so much more to be done, right? So yeah, very unfortunate and very sad, right? Every time Indian soldiers are killed or die in things. I mean, accidents, and which are probably uh, avoidable as well, right?
Yeah, and given also the amount of infrastructure work that's been happening as well, right, everywhere. So this is kind of sad. As you rightly put it, I think it reminds us of the stakes, right, at which which are there to protect this country. Um, on the economy front, sorry, yeah, on the economy front. India's GDP growth might see a slump in the coming months. The surge in COVID 19 infections caused by the Omicron variant of the coronavirus and the resulting restrictions imposed by state governments has resulted in unfavorable forecasts for the quarter 4 of FY22. Economists also noted part of the weakness in the upcoming release would be due to a higher base 1 year ago. The government does not officially release quarter on quarter GDP data. A separate Reuters survey last month estimated average growth for 21-22 at 8.7%, lower than the official second advance estimate of 8.9% released on February 28th. Um, Prasanna, I think the estimates, like I think I saw a report that Moody's also cut the estimates for growth and stuff, right? I mean, what do we make of this? I mean, how does this impact us in some sense? You're on mute, Prasanna.
Yeah, sorry. Able to hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think like the estimates kind of vary anywhere between 2.5% to 5%, but I think a large part of it was due to the some level of uh, you know the pandemic related disruption that happened in January. I think a lot of state governments moved to place restrictions and all that, and of course the soaring inflation, high input cost, all that is also going to have an effect. So I think we're looking at like a financial year overall growth of around 8.5 to 8.7% actually. So the to some extent, I think the uh, damage due to the lockdowns was little limited this time. I think maybe 2 weeks to 3 weeks in January was what uh, was the impact. But generally, other than that, the economy was certainly resilient actually. But I think like the global factors and certainly the massive, uh, increase in the commodity prices, all that is going to weigh in on the performance actually. So I think overall good numbers for the FY, but if not for the third wave, maybe it could have been even better. That's my sense.
Right. Uh, in some sports news, India thrashed Indonesia 16-0 to qualify for Super 4 in the Asia Hockey Cup. India required 15 goals to eclipse Pakistan on goal difference and qualify for the next round. This massive win not only secured India's passage into the knockout stage of the tournament, but also shut the door on Pakistan. This was India's first win in the ongoing edition of the Asia Cup, as they were held to a 1-1 draw by Pakistan before suffering a 2-5 defeat at the hands of Japan. Abhishek, 16-0. I mean, that's crazy, right? I mean, I think India Indonesia sports rivalry is like continuing from the Thomas Cup onwards.
Yeah, I mean, might expect a 16-0 more likely in badminton than hockey, but it happened in a hockey match. So, yeah, I think I was just looking at the news reports and the team seems to have a lot of changes after the Olympics, right? I think some of the senior players have probably retired or are taking a break. So I think it's a young squad. And as you said, we lost in the first round to Japan and had a draw versus Pakistan. So 15-0 sort of goal difference was needed to qualify, and I think they managed to do it barely in the last 1 or 2 minutes. I'm guessing because I think the match was like going. The number of goals means that it will be like that kind of a close encounter. I believe we've now defeated Japan in the Super 4 round, so we have sort of got back the win that the defeat we suffered in the first round. So yeah, I think interesting times for Indian hockey with I think a lot of new players also coming into the national team. So a good opportunity for them to shine in this tournament.
All right. In more sporting news, another year of the IPL has come to a close with the finals being played today. Hardik Pandya led Gujarat Titans have made it to the finals in the maiden season and will be facing off against Rajasthan Royals, who triumphed against the RCB earlier this week. Star batsman Virat Kohli, star batsman, okay. Virat Kohli took to social media to share an emotional message to everyone associated with the franchise. He stated, "Sometimes you win, sometimes you don't, but the 12th man army, you've been fantastic, and thank the management." Will this be the first time a new team has lifted the trophy in their first season? Well, that's the question we're asking. Prasanna, Abhishek, who do you have your money on?
Today, I think I'll put my money on RR. Okay, I
Yeah.
guess uh, quite a talented team, and I think and of course Butler head and shoulders above any other white ball cricketer at the moment. Actually, he just gives the team so much strength and clout, and this team is just. I mean, of course, Butler's role has been quite spectacular, but they have got a good mix, right? Actually, probably except for that Padikkal, I think like they have a fairly explosive batting lineup, and even the bowling without having any superstars seem quite balanced, right? Like they have a good leggy, they have a veteran off spinner, and then a couple of good pace bowlers as well. So my money is on RR. I think, like, I mean, Gujarat certainly has been a surprise package in the sense, uh, you know, they also don't really have the superstar names, right? But somehow, all their bets seems to have paid off, and I mean, they do have. I mean, and the leadership of Pandya has been quite inspirational, and Miller also coming to the party. But I would think that, like, overall, on the sheer depth of the talent, I would bet on RR actually.
Yeah, I would also bet on the Royals. I think they would probably do it for Shane Warne, right? I mean, it's also a very emotional sort of a thing for them. So yeah, I really hope that they do it. Um, yeah, I mean, RCB doesn't make it to another semi-final, so that's another thing. Yeah, Abhishek.
No, I think, like, I mean, they even made it into the playoffs only because of that last. I mean, I think that was for Delhi's match to have won, and I think somehow they squandered and kind of lost that, right? Otherwise, I don't think so. RCB had the kind of displayed the kind of form where they were a natural claimant for one of the playoff
Yeah,
finishes, right? Like, their all their superstars were like in so much Faf to Kohli, completely out of form, and Siraj, I think, was all over the place. I mean, Patidar came to the party, but I don't think so. He was really part of the original mix, right? And I think
Yes.
the
yeah,
opener that they betted on initially, Anuj Rawat, I mean, never fired after a couple of good performances. So overall, I think, um, except for some inspired performance by DK in couple of matches, I think RCB had a very patchy 14 matches. So
yeah.
I think they should count themselves lucky that they made it into the playoffs. And of course, I mean, and then that win against Lucknow kind of would have kindled expectation of the fans. But overall, I don't think so. They really deserved a top finish this
Yeah.
this season.
No, I couldn't agree more. Especially the way they celebrated Delhi's loss, right? I mean, that's it was just absurd, actually. So, Abhishek, who do you have your money on?
Yeah, I'm not sure who's winning. It's going to be hopefully a pretty close game. So if you recall, we did a preview show in Bharatvaarta before the IPL started, and at that time, my top two teams were RR and Lucknow. So that was my prediction. I would
Ah,
say I think it got played out pretty well. So I think Gujarat, Lucknow, and Rajasthan were clearly the three best teams in the tournament. And then we have a bunch of teams. I would say Delhi, Bangalore, maybe Sunrisers. These are like the next level, like a little cut below the top three, right? And yeah, I think Gujarat, uh, right from the start, has been a bowling heavy team, right? So they have some really good bowlers, right? Like Rashid Khan, Mohammad Shami has bowled well in parts. So they have a pretty decent bowling attack, and they have sort of managed to, score where required, right? With people like Pandya and David Miller and few others also. Riddhiman Shah has played a few decent knocks at the top. Shubman Gill has played the odd good knock. So, they're predominantly a bowling heavy side, and they've managed their batting resources around that. Rajasthan is totally different. Like they have one um, player who's stand out or head and shoulders above anyone else in Butler. So it would be interesting in case Butler gets out early, and that is always possible, right? Because it's a final, and it just takes, like, one poor shot, a run, really good ball to dismiss someone. So it would be interesting to see how Rajasthan counter that. they do have other good batsmen as well, right? And especially Sanju Samson started off the tournament pretty well. He's been struggling of late, but in case Butler has an off day, I think a lot will depend on how Samson plays. Also, I mean, the others around him like Padikal, etc., also need to chip in. But it will be interesting to see if, in case
Hetmeyer, I
Butler
think
doesn't play.
Hetmeyer had a good first 6 matches, right? Then
Yeah, I think he had to go back home
he had
and
to
come
go
back.
back.
So he's not really got a chance after
No, I
that.
think after
But
coming
yeah,
back, they have also not utilized him. Like say, they kind of
yeah,
he doesn't get that 4 5 overs where he can kind of
yeah,
quickly bat himself and then flourish. So I think like some rejig of the batting order where probably Hetmeyer kind of is there up.
yeah,
But I think certainly from man-to-man comparison in terms of the team strength, RR towers above
yeah.
Gujarat. But
Because
like you said, Gujarat is beautifully blended as a unit based
team.
on some, modest players, but it's all blended together very well for them this year.
Yeah, Ashwin and Chahal both playing for Rajasthan. Possibly they might be India's attack in the World Cup as well, right?
World Cup, right? Hmm.
Both have had decent seasons. So we'll have to see there.
All right, we'll wait and see how that pans out. So that brings us to the end of the Bharatvaarta Weekly for this week. Thank you again for joining us from Abhishek, Prasanna, and myself. Do stay
Thank you
safe,
so
take
much.
care, and see you next week.
Thank you.